In my opinion, in terms of the true historical identity of so-called African Americans and how that true identity relates to the transatlantic slave trade, this 1700s document, written by a German professor, is one of the most valuable resources. And it's only about 4 pages long, and there's no excuse not to read it. I'm going to show you how to get this document free of charge. So let's get into this, and here are some key points coming from this document. Number one, it actually makes a clear distinction between the Moors who are black and the Negroes who are black. This is huge. Number two, it identifies the Negroes, not the Moors, as the true focus or target of the transatlantic slave trade. Number three, it identifies these Negroes specifically as Jews, whether they are from Spain, Portugal, or the continent of Africa. It admits, number four, that the Negroes Jews had also been the target of slavery by the Moors, who are black, as far back as 990 AD. Number five, it specifies the locations worldwide where the Negro Jews were shipped. And number six, it identifies the massive depopulation of the native populations wherever the Europeans decided to settle. And finally, seven, it identifies the tactic of dehumanization that the explorers used in order to receive permission from the Pope and the government to slaughter millions of people. All right, so let's look into this document. Point number one, it actually makes a clear distinction between the Moors who are black and the Negroes who are black. Let's quote from the book. It says, the first account of the Negro trade of the Moors in North Africa is to be found in the Nubian Geographer, page 8 of the Latin version. So, quoting from this book, it's saying that the Moors were the ones who began to trade the Negroes. Both groups are black, but they're different groups of blacks. And it says that this trade was still carried on in the 15th century when the Portuguese began to establish new marts for slaving trade on the coast, as appears from the frequent accounts of their first navigators. Point number two, it identifies the Negroes, not the Moors, as the true focus or target of the transatlantic slave trade. So I want you to see this point here when we quote this from the book. The guy in charge of this is a bishop. He's a leading member of the Catholic Church. Watch this. Bishop Lacases is generally thought to have been the first who advised the Spaniards to import slaves from Africa in order to spare the Indians. But our author shows that before that time, Moorish and Negro slaves were sent to America. What before him had been already done by private Spanish individuals, he procured to be done by a general royal order, or he proposed Negroes. Listen to this. He proposed Negroes instead of the few Moorish slaves who had till then been sent to America. This is powerful because it's saying that this bishop got an official general royal order to make sure that the people who were being targeted were the Negroes and not the few. And they're admitting there had only been a few Moorish slaves that had got caught up in the transatlantic slave trade. But this order made sure that it was just the Negroes and not the Moors. Point number three. It identifies the Negroes specifically as Jews, whether they are from Spain, Portugal, or the continent of Africa. So point number three, let's quote from the book. It says, at length, the Portuguese in 1471 discovered the Gold Coast, and ever since, the intercourse between Portugal and Guinea was continued. The Portuguese endeavored to exclude other nations from Guinea, while the rest of the European navigators were, in spite of the Papa Bulls and all the reports industrially spread of the pretended dangers of that coast, striving to get a share of that profitable gold trade. Discovery of the Gold Coast served indeed, yet more to enlarge the sphere of the navigation of the Portuguese than their slave trade. but it forced them also to extend themselves on the Gold Coast and to settle colonies in Congo, Angola, and other places, which they had till then neglected. Prince Henry's colonies were enlarged by his successors. King John II in 1492 expelled all the Jews to the island of St. Thomas, which had been discovered in 1471, and to other Portuguese settlements on the continent of Africa. And from these banished Jews, the black Portuguese, as they are called, and the Jews in Luango, who are despised even by the very Negroes, are descended. So this is saying that when 1492, when King John kicked all the Jews out of Portugal, it's saying that these people were also called the Jews. And it's saying that these Jews were descendants of the other Negroes who lived on the African continent. And particularly here, it points out Luango. Now look at Luango here on the map. And look at the countries associated with Luango. All right, point number 4. It admits that the Negro Jews had also been the target of slavery by the Moors as far back as 990 AD. All right, so let's look at this text here. It said it is generally imagined that the Europeans were the first who taught the Negroes this cruel branch of trade, but the poor Negroes had already tasted of the hardest slavery long before the arrival of the Portuguese on their coast. No barbarous nation has ever so far forgotten the rights and dignity of human nature as these African Negroes. With them, friends or foes are alike reduced to slavery whenever they have the misfortune of offending their lords or falling into the hands of a stronger man. All Negroes are born slaves of their masters, by whom they are doomed to death or sale, not only for trifling offenses, but for mere ill humor, and often to sale, merely to gratify their master's thirst after brandy. As far as their history can be traced, the northern neighbors of the Negroes, the Arabs in Morocco, were the first who purchased slaves of the Negroes, ever since the year of Christ 990. The Moroccans had extended their conquest to the northern banks of the Senegal. Point number 5. It specifies the locations worldwide where the Negroes were shipped. And we quote, these Negroes were purchased from Guinea, Congo, and Monacongo, and the colonists had plantations furnished with from 150 to 3,000 Negro slaves. In the beginning of the 16th century, the Spaniards and Portuguese began to transport Negroes, remember, for similar trades to the West Indies and Brazil, by which the Negro trade was rapidly increased. Now remember that when we say Negroes, this text is referring to all Negroes as Jews. Then it goes on to quote and say, the Court of Trade at Seville, and Seville is in Spain, appointed 4,000 Negroes to be annually transported to the islands of Domingo, Fernandina, Puerto Rico, and Jamaica. So when we start talking about the West Indies and the Brazil, that's South America. When we talk about Brazil with the West Indies, we're coming up to North America. Modern day West Indies country names are Antigua and Barbuda, Bahamas, Barbados, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Grenada, Haiti, Jamaica, St. Kitts, Nevis, St. Lucie, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines, Trinidad, and Tobago. So these are the islands where the black or Negro Jews were being shipped to. Point number 6. It identifies the massive depopulation of the native populations wherever the Europeans decided to settle. So we read this quote before for point number 6, but I'm going to add a couple of lines in there that I skipped. It said Bishop Lacassus is generally thought to have been the first who advised the Spaniards to import slaves from Africa in order to spare the Indians. That's key. But our author shows that before that time, Moorish and even Negro slaves were sent to America. Lacaz's merits consisted in saving South America from an entire depopulation. So when they were in South America, they almost completely depopulated the entire area. The poor Indians were forced to dive for pearls, to wash gold sand, and to work gold and silver mines for their new masters. They were often carried away far from their native homes, and in short, they were so miserably fed and used that in a short time, these countries were entirely depopulated. Now I'm going to pull up an article from 2019. Now, this was quoted in CNN by CNN, the BBC, the Guardian, all of the mainstream papers admitted this. But they said that there were so many people killed by year 1600. We hadn't even gotten to America yet. By year 1600, they had already killed so many people. They quote 56 million people. That they had killed 56 million people by year 1600. That it changed the weather patterns at that time and the weather patterns that we experience today. Point number 7. It identifies the tactic of dehumanization that the explorers used in order to receive permission to slaughter millions. This tactic is still being used today. Dehumanize people and you have a right to destroy them. Point number 7. In order to supply that loss, the Spaniards carried off the other Indians who were not yet subdued by stratagem or force, especially from the Lecayan Islands. The Spanish court at last prohibited those violences. So I'm going to stop there. So the law said that it was against the law to treat them this bad. So they had to find a way to get around it. Watch this. It said, but the Spaniards soon found means for evading the orders of their court. They decried the Indians in Europe as the most sanguinary race of savages, on which Ferdinand repealed his former orders and bade them carry off these cannibals by force from their native places and to treat and sell them as slaves. With a great deal of pain and dangers, the Spaniards now carried away the number of laborers wanted for their exigencies, but soon found them too weak to support long and hard labors. And because of this, they kept going and getting more Negroes. So if they completely, or almost completely depopulated the places where they went into, who are the people that's left? And you gotta ask those key questions. So we know that the descendants of the slaves they brought up are there. But you gotta ask yourself, who are the rest of those people? Now I said I was gonna keep this short, so I wanna make sure that you understand that the information is available to you. There's a link in the comments as well as the description section to download this book for free. It's a small segment in an entire book of history, a collection of history. So make sure that you download this book and you find it. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put 2 books that this document was quoted in. They used this document in a couple of different sources that I found and put both of them in there, so you can actually download those for free and study this yourself. Alright, so who was the author of this important writing? His name was Matthias Christian Sprengel. He was a German geographer and historian. He was born in the year 1746. He was notably the author of works on North American history, the American Revolution, and Maratha history. He studied history at the University of Göttingen as a pupil of August Ludwig van Slotzer. In 1778, he became an associate professor, and during the following year, relocated to the University of Halle as a full professor of history. At Halle, he worked closely with Johann Reinhold Forster, who in time became Sprengel's father-in-law. All right, that being said, I hope that this document will be valuable to you. We have a plethora of documents, but I haven't found one that's so compact and sums up the slave trade as well as this one. So study it, look over it, spread it around, give it to your family, and let them decide for themselves. So what else can you do to make sure that this content gets out there? Well, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you share the content, make sure you comment, if you have something to say. And also make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell on the side as well so that you can get the content as we post. All right, fam, it was good talking to you guys. Shalom.